All right. So today we're continuing the portfolio project. Really excited. Got some things to work out today. So we're working on the home page to start. Let's go ahead and open that up. Okay, so what things do we want on this home page? We kind of got the header. There's something about the header, though. Translate languages. That's right. Um, so header, we need translate languages. Cool. We have our awesome navigation bar here. There's not actually, these are not anything right now, but got the account. All right. And then we have our header page, which this is it. There's nothing else. Really what it is, well, it's just this. One div. So what we want on our header page, or home page. Okay. Oh, so I want a hero image, which is kind of what we have right now. Maybe we scale it smaller, not sure. But we have our hero image. We have a form at the bottom to contact us. But between the hero image, this and like right here, I'm gonna want um, let's do this. I'm writing this down. Header, we need translation languages. Okay, and then the home page. Okay, I'm kind of drawing this out. So we have our hero image. It's Michael. Full stack web developer. Okay. Sorry. Um, I'm sorry. Just thinking about something that I need to get taken care of. One of my keyboards went dead and I gotta get that taken care of. All right, so we're gonna have our image here, and then I do want something like down here for reviews. But what other things do I have to say? So let's look at this. Well, if I'm someone who wants to hire a web developer, what would I want to see? I would want to see probably projects. Like I want to see what this person has done, right? So, so let's do reviews. So we'll have a carousel of reviews. Visible here. Okay. Probably like 3, you know, right here, coming across. Um, then maybe like a banner to split it up. Um, Something that goes across the entire width of the screen and has a background and has words. Um, Something about what I focus on, like um, built with your interest in mind. Um, I'll just put a note here, statement about how I conduct business. Um, okay, and then we can have like a skills section, which would be Um, hmm. Skills I have used section, which are more cards. Maybe. I don't know. I think those are good. And then maybe a form, you know, maybe the form is after the skills. Um, Actually, projects. I want projects on this home page. Projects, and then skills. It'd be cool if we could do like a spider web kind of thing, where we have these little personal projects. I'm gonna just put a note. Spider web. So what I'm thinking is we have like this, you know, a project, and then it's got like lines that connect to all the different materials or all the different skills that were used to build that project. That would be kind of cool. Okay, and then at the very bottom, contact me form. Okay, and probably a footer. All right, there we go. This is a low-res wireframe. I'm taking a picture. I'll put it on one of my screens here. Okay. Sending it to my computer. There it is. All right. Bada bing, bada boom. Hey, Sharon Poe, thanks. If you're not a bot. All right, so what we're gonna do here is we are going to put in a carousel reviews banner with these words: personal projects, cards, skills, contact form, and footer, all on the home page. We got that's a lot that we're gonna attempt to do today, and it's all with Material UI. So let's get cracking. First things first, carousel reviews. Let's pull up Material UI. We'll grab this. Components. I think it was literally called carousel. I guess not. It's one of these photos. It's not that one. Let's see. Text with carousel effect for reviews. Stepper. It's called Stepper. Oh, weird. There we go. Hey, not what I wanted. There we go. Stepper. Steppers are no longer documented in material. React swipeable views. You know what might be easier to do? With Material UI, there's a lot of this. So I'm thinking, what if we do this? I got a home page. If I make new folder, homepage components, and then inside we'll make a folder. I don't know how to spell carousel. How do you spell carousel? Gosh dang it. Reviews carousel. All right. So this, what this does is this really cleans up my code, because now I have a fully functioning. Leave me alone, little doohickey. Now I have a fully functioning carousel on my. Well, I gotta import it. Import reviews from. So we gotta go back one. Oh, we gotta go back more. There we go. Can't resolve React swipeable views. Hmm. Okay, we're gonna add a new terminal here. Okay, npm is fetching the package that we need. So this works. Added to our package.json. And there it is. Now it's being hidden by, of course, our sidebar here, and it isn't centered. So, not to mention that we have to make some changes in the carousel. So we have our images here. We have labels. That's all stuff that we'll have to pull from our database, actually, when people submit the reviews. Yeah. So, I need to take a quick bio break. I'm gonna be right back. All right. So, first things first. let's figure out how to move it where we want it moved. Let's look at the initial documentation. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. 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 Okay. Um, I want layout. Material design is guided by print-based design elements such as typography, grid, space, scale, color, and imagery to create hierarchy, meaning, and focus that immerse the user in the experience. Material design adopts tools from the field of print design like baseline grid, structure, and structural templates, encouraging consistency across environments by repeating visual element structural grids and spacing across platforms and screen sizes. These layouts scale to fit any screen size, which simplifies the process of creating scalable apps. How paper works. In material design, the physical properties of paper are translated to the screen. The background of an application resembles the flat, opaque texture of a sheet of paper, and the application's behavior mimics paper's ability to be resized, shuffled, and bound together in multiple sheets. The surfaces that comprise applications are referred to in this spec as material or sheets of material. Elements outside of applications, such as system bars, are separate from the app content beneath them and are not treated as material. Seams. Two sheets of material share an entire common edge called seams. So, just reading some information on this. The kind of structure we have here is this temporary overlay, as you can see clearly. It temporarily overlays this. I need to change these to typography so that they will change, but for now they're fine. Just gonna keep looking at the documentation for the Material UI documentation. Hmm. Okay, I'm gonna take a real bio break here. I'll be right back. All right, back to documentation. So I think I need some instruction on how to use this grid system. Oh, server problems galore, it seems. It's a bummer. Okay. Well, let's go to good old YouTube. I highly recommend the Net Ninja. Awesome YouTuber. Recently came out with a Material UI course. Let's see, using icons, button topography, the grid system. Here we go. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know how to get this.
Now, when it comes to layouts using Material UI, the main components we'd use are the grid component. Alright then, so now we're grabbing our data right here and we're outputting all of that data inside this notes component, and we can see that in the browser right here, but at the minute it doesn't look great. And what I'd like to do is start to work on the layout a little bit. Now, when it comes to layouts using Material UI, the main components we'd use are the grid components. So Material offers us a 12-column grid system based on Flexbox, and it's very simple to use. So what I'm going to do is first of all import a couple of things at the top of this notes page. The first one is going to be grid. This is the grid component we're going to use to create a grid layout. And then the second one is paper, which we're going to use inside that grid. And this is kind of like a very, very simplistic card, if you like. It's meant to look like a piece of paper on the screen with a bit of elevation. That's just to put our content inside. So then, down here, let's do a simple example of this grid. So we're going to use this grid component right here. Now, there's two things we need when we're creating a grid layout. The first one is a grid container. That's like a wrapper around all of the elements inside the grid. And then the second thing is grid items. They're the things that are going to be laid out on the grid. So, first of all, I'm going to create a grid container. Now, that is just the grid component, but we pass in a prop called container, and that tells Material UI that this is the container. And now inside here we can place grid items. So let's do that. I'm going to say grid like so, the same components. This should be grid, not gird. So grid, and then inside here we're just going to output the paper component like so, and we'll output a number 1. Now then, what I'm going to do is copy this and paste it a few times down here. So we have 4 items in total. I'll change this to 2, this to 3, and this to 4. Now, I said that this should be a grid item. This is a grid item as well, and this, and this. So we have to say that these are grid items. So I'm going to alt-click all of these and pass in a prop to each one, which is item. So now we're saying these are all grid items, things that are inside the grid container. So if I save this now, by default, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, all next to each other. And if we zoom in, you can kind of see that paper component. It's like a little bubble around the number with a drop shadow, okay? All right then. So by default, when we have a grid like this, all it does is align them up left to right, because without those, they would go one on top of each other, like these things right here. But the default behavior of the grid is to put things next to each other in a row. Now, at the minute, they're all squashed up on the left, and I want to make them into a grid so they take up the whole space of the page, so that each one has an equal width on that page. So, how do we do this? Well, we have to specify how many columns each grid item is going to take up. Now, I said before that the grid is a 12-column grid system, so we can distribute the columns between these 4 items. So if we take 12 and divide that by 4 items, I'd say 3 columns for each item, right? Now, the grid system is also responsive, and we can specify how many columns each item takes up at different screen widths. So for example, I could say from medium-sized screens and up, that's MD, I would say I want this to take 3 columns up. And I'm going to do the same for each one of these things. So I'll copy it here and paste it here, paste it here, and paste it here. And remember, these breakpoints are built in to Material UI. So on our screen at the minute, each one of these now should have a column width of 3 columns. So they should each take up a quarter of the page, but it doesn't. So let me just zoom out to normal size, and that's why it was because I was zoomed in. So now, when we go to normal size, we can see each one of these columns is taking up a quarter of the width of the screen, right? But when we get down to this kind of size, which is less than medium, then it's not showing those widths anymore. They're bunching back up on the left. And that's because this grid system right here is saying that only for medium-sized screens and up should it be 3 columns. Below that, it reverts back to type. Now, what I tend to do is start at the very smallest screen size, and that is extra small. And what I would do is say, okay, at this screen size, I want each of these items to take up maybe 12 columns in width, and that would be the whole width of the page because the grid is only 12 columns across. So if I take this and paste it down in each one of these, like so, and save this, what I'm going to do is move this down. You can see each one of these now is taking up the whole width of the screen. It's taking up all 12 columns on the grid. But the minute we get to a medium-sized screen now, it's going to break up so they all have 3 columns each instead, and they sit next to each other. So you can see how this grid system is responsive. Okay, so let's also add in another breakpoint. I'm going to say for each of these, so I'll alt-click to do it all at once. For each of these, I'm going to add the small breakpoint, and at small-sized screens and up, I'm going to say 6 columns. So for extra small and up, it would be 12 columns. So the smallest size screen, 12 columns. When it gets to a small size screen, which is a little bit larger, it's going to be 6 columns. So let me take this out a little bit. We can see 6 columns now, so 6 on the left and 6 on the right. So there's 2 next to each other, and then the other 2 automatically go down to the next row. And then when it gets to medium-sized screens, it's going to go to 3 columns, like that. And that would be it then. As far as we get out wide, it's always going to be this width. We could also add in the large breakpoints right here, but we don't need to do that for our case. I think this looks fine. So that's how to use the grid system. Pretty simple, right? Now, what I want to do is comment out that example, and instead I want to put these things in a grid right here. So how do I do that? Well, each of these items that we're outputting for a note is going to be a grid item. And remember, around grid items, we need a grid container. So let's do a grid container around this thing. First of all, grid, and we'll say container, like so. We'll take the closing grid tag, and we'll paste it at the end of here and scoot this in. Now each of these things now needs to be a grid item. So we'll say grid item like so, and close this off over here, grid. Okay, cool. So now let's take all of this stuff right here. I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to add in the paper components and paste it inside the paper, just so it's elevated a little bit on the screen. All right, so this thing right here is still getting the key because it's the root element inside this map function right here. But now it's a grid item. Now remember, by default, these should all sit next to each other now. But we need to apply columns to them because they're all slightly different widths dependent on their width of the text. So let's now go to this grid item and apply these different widths. I'm going to say for extra small size screens, it should be 12 columns. And then for medium, it's going to be 6. And then for large, it's going to be 4. So let's give this a whirl. So you can see, if I make this into the largest screen, we have 3 items next to each other because each one has 4 columns of width. 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 12, and the next one goes to the next line down. If we scoot this down, when we get to a medium size screen, it's going to be 6 columns in width, each one of these. And then when we get to a smaller size screen, all going to stack on top of each other. Okay, cool. So that's the grid system sorted, and that's kind of the grid layout I want for this. Now there's one more thing I'm going to do, and that is to turn this into a container instead. So let me just change that down here as well. And that should have auto imported at the top. Let me just check that. Yep. Import container from Material UI core. And we talked about this before. All it does is apply a bit of margin and padding to the contents. So let's preview this again. And now we get a bit of margin and padding on the left and right. Cool. So although that doesn't look great at the minute, it's the grid system set up at least. And next we can start to work on these individual items. And instead of using paper, we're going to use the card component, and I'll show you that next.
Good grammar and spelling are important, but if you want to write essays that inspire, messages that forge brighter connections.
All right, nice.
Okay then, so now we have this grid system set up to display our individual notes, and at the minute our notes are just being output in this paper component, and it looks like this on the screen. Now this paper component is alright, but I'd like to make something that looks a little bit nicer, and to do that we're going to learn about the card components in Material UI. But before we do that, I'd like to place all of that card code in a separate component, not inside this one because I don't want this one to get too messy. So I'm going to create a new folder inside source, and this is going to be called components. The reason I'm not putting it inside pages is because this component is not going to be a page. It's going to be an individual note card, and then we're going to import that into this notes page. So let's create a new file called notecard.js, and inside that I'm just going to boilerplate a React component. So this is called note card right here, and at the minute it's just returning an empty div, but let's just say note right here so we know what it is. And then inside note I'm going to import that. So at the top we'll import note card from, and then out of the current directory, which is the pages folder, into components, and then we want the note card. And now instead of outputting the paper, I'm going to output a note card. So if I save this, we should see the text note about 4 times. Yep, we do. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. Now, instead of outputting note, I want to output the note title or some details about the note at least. So I'm going to pass through a prop into this, and that prop is going to be called note, and it's going to be equal to the note we have access to inside this map function. So now we can accept that inside this function. So we can destructure the note prop from the props object we get automatically in here, and we can output that right here. So I'm going to say note.title like so, and we should see the note title. Awesome, we do. Okay, so that's that component created, but now we need to flesh this out and work with the note component, or rather, sorry, the card component from Material UI. Now, there's a bucket load of ways that we can use the card in Material UI, and it offers us loads of customization. So let's just scroll down and have a look at a few examples. The first one is a simple card with just a bit of text styled differently and a button at the bottom. If we scroll down a little bit more, this is an outlined card, so it just has a border around the edge, whereas this one has a drop shadow. This is a more complex one. It has an avatar, some title stuff. This button up here, we have this picture, some text, icons at the bottom, and even a drop down right here as well. So this is pretty nice, this card. It would be good for a recipe kind of website. If we scroll down further, we can have a more simplistic card with an image and some buttons at the bottom. Now, we're going to make basically a variation of this one, but without as many elements. So we're not going to have this image. We are going to have this avatar, these titles, an icon up here. We're going to have some text as well, but we're not going to have the bottom bit down here either. But let's just open up the code for this and see how it's made. Now, at first glance, it's probably going to look a little bit complex, all of this stuff right here, but ours is going to be a little more simple. Now, to begin with, you can see we have this card component right here. That wraps all of the content inside the card. That's the base component. Then we have the card header, and the card header includes a prop for the avatar. That's this thing on the left over here. Also, it has an action. That's the button in the top right. And it also has a title and a subheader. And that's these two things right here. So we're going to have all of that later on. Now down here, this is the card media for the image. We're not going to have that, but then we will have the card content, and this is going to be for the typography. And then the card actions at the bottom, we're not going to have. So our card is actually going to be pretty simple to put together. So let us now, first of all, see what we have to import over here. So we need the card, and we need the card header and the card content. So what I'm going to do is just copy and paste.
So something that I'm definitely going to have to look at doing is this. I like how he set this up. He has a key. What is he using? Go back to his other videos. See if he puts his code somewhere. There we go. Where would I put it? Oh, this is a boilerplate.
Very first material.
All right, so grid. Okay. All right. So here's the paper. We have to typography, autoplay swipeable views, okay. Actually, go back here. Just kind of want to watch
For just $67, you can make as many videos as you want, and you never need to pick up a camera. Alright then, so now we have all of this content right here. What I'd like to do is kind of step away from this a little bit and create a layout file that's going to surround this content. And not just the content on this page, but also the content on the create page. Now, this layout component is going to consist of eventually a side drawer with some links on to these different pages, and also an app bar at the top with maybe a title or something like that. So, what I'd like to do in this video is just create a layout component for this layout file, and then that layout component is going to wrap all of the content on both of the pages. So then, let's create that file first of all. I'm going to do that inside the components folder. So let's create a layout.js file, and then I'll boilerplate this. This is called layout, and then inside, let's just place some text for now, layout. Now, how do we get this to wrap all of our pages? Well, all we need to do is come to the root component where we output these pages right here, and it's going to surround this switch component. Now, it needs to. We are going to use the router inside the layout component, so it has to go inside the router component. So all I'll do is say layout right here. I'm going to click on this to auto import it at the top, and then I'm going to wrap it around the switch component. So let me grab that and place it at the bottom over here. So now, if I save this, what's going to happen? Well, if we come over here and we're on the create page, we just see this text right here, layout. And if we go to the home page, we just see that text, layout. And that's not what's supposed to happen. I want to still see the page content, but I want to see this layout content wrapping around that page content. So why is this not working? Well, it's because we have this layout component right here. So React looks into that layout component and it says, well, okay, this is the content for that. So I'm just going to display that. And it discards all of the children, all of these things inside the layout component. Now, we don't want it to discard the children. We want to output the children, but we need to output them explicitly inside this layout component. Now, we get access to the children on the props directly here, so we can destructure that by saying children, like so. And this children property represents all of this content right here. So all we need to do is output that somewhere inside this layout. So I could now just say children like so, and that's going to output them. So we can see all the content here. And if we go to /create, we see all the content here. So this is pretty much now like we had it before we even started the layout component. Only now we can add in content above it or below it if we want a footer or a sidebar somewhere as well. So it makes it a bit more flexible, this approach. All right then. So what I'd like to do is first of all, wrap this in some kind of div. So let me do a div and open this up. We'll place the children inside it. Now I also want to give a class to this div. So we can style it a little bit, and we're going to be using make styles to create this class in a second. So I'll set this equal to classes dots, and we'll call it page because all of the page content is essentially going to go here. All right then, so we need to use the make styles now to create these classes. So let's do that. I'm going to say const use styles is equal to make styles. I'm going to click on this to auto import it at the top, and inside here we pass a function. So all I want to do is make one class, which is the page class, and that is going to have a background color. So we'll say background, and that's going to be a hash code. So F9, F9, F9. It's a really light gray. After that, I'm also going to say the width of this will be 100%. All right then, so if I save this now, then it says right here, classes is not defined. That's because we've not used this use styles hook right here. So let's do that. I'll say const classes is equal to use styles, like so. Okay, so save that now, and now we see it. And you should just be able to make out that light grey background of the content, and it should be the same for the home page. If we go there, yeah, we get a light grey background. Awesome, so that's worked. All right, so eventually, like I said, we're also going to have an app bar inside here. So let's do a little comment for that right here. App bar at the top. We're also going to have a side drawer, so a comment for that as well. Now, we're not going to make those in this video, but we are going to start on the side drawer in the next tutorial. But at least now we have our layout component ready to go.
My daughter is beautiful, charismatic.
Alright then, so in our layout component right here, I'd like to make a side drawer for the navigation. So it would include. Alright then, so now we have. Alright then, so now we have all of this content right here. What I'd like to do is. Alright then, so now we have all of this content right here. What I'd like to do is kind of step away from this a little bit and create a layout file that's going to surround this content, and not just the content on this page, but also the content on the create page. Now, this layout component is going to consist of.
All right, so we are going to look at the other video because that's the one I'm looking for, it looks like.
So I'm going to pass through a prop into this, and that prop is going to be called note, and it's going to be equal to the note we have access to inside this map function.
Wonder where notes is coming from. It's coming from our .json.
So now we can have some kind of function right here and our state as well. So let's create this function. I'm going to say const, and we'll call it handle delete right here. Set it equal to is a delete. It's going to want to filter that out to the notes card right here. So I'll say handle delete is equal to handle delete. So we're passing it in as a prop. And then inside note card, I'm going to say handle delete over here. And then down here, instead of logging this to the console, I'm going to say handle delete. And we need to pass in the ID of the note. So note.id. I'm going to get rid of this one. Click on delete, handle delete note, and pass in new note. It's going to keep it in the array. If we return false, it's going to filter it out and pass in a second. So the note that to smaller. Let me save it and find out between each card. Cool. Grid. All we have to do is come equal to the note.title that we take in right here. And then also we want the subheader, which is the text below that, and it's going to be the notes.category this time. So if we save this and preview, we can see now the title at the top and the category underneath. And already this is looking a bit better. Now, before we go any further, I just want to return to the grid system because I want a bit of space between each of these items. Now, to do that in our grid, all I have to do is come to the grid container right here and add in a spacing prop. And we set that equal to a number. I'm going to say 3, for example. And what this does is take the base spacing value, which I think is 8 pixels in Material UI, and times it by 3. So it should be 24 pixels in between each card. Cool. So that looks a bit better. Okay, so now we have the header sorted over here. Let's also output the details, and that's going to be inside the card content. So below the card header, let's now do card content, and then inside this we need typography. So I'm going to say typography, click on that to auto import it up here, and then inside the typography component, I'm going to say note.details like so. And if I click save now, we can see all of the details down below. Now, I just want to change the type of text right here. So first of all, I'm going to say variant is equal to body2. And that should make it, I think, a bit smaller. Let me save it and find out. Yep, goes a bit smaller, which looks nicer. I also want to change the color. So the color is going to be text variant is we need between each card. Spacing grid. All we have to want the subheader, which is the text below that. If we save it, this is nothing because of do is come to the grid container right here and add in a spacing prop. And we set that equal to a number. I'm going to say 3 for example. Into the grid. All we have to because of do is come to the grid container category this time. So if we save this and preview, we can see now the title at the top and the category underneath. And already this is...
I'm gonna... There's bits and pieces here, and I think it wouldn't hurt for me to go through the entire tutorial and do this along with him.
It's looking a bit better. Now, before we go any further, I just want to do that in our grid. This is looking because of an actual header. We have an icon. Let's start with the action, which is, oops, let me scroll back down, this thing over here. Now, let me take a look how they've done that in the but for an inside an action prop. They do that, then delete, let's get a sortage and icon. Title prop, and note, give you a bit space grid container right here and add in a spacing prop. And we set that equal to a number. I'm going to say 3, for example. And what this does is take the base to a number in these items. Now, to do that in our grid, all we have to do is come to the grid container. And now we can let me cut the button. That's that. Then that will text this base. This one has a customized. Now we can accept that in with title 1, 2, 3, 4 in car.
I think I could do that. Hmm. So what I'm trying to think of right now is, can I code this to have 3 images at a time? The code would mean that I would be pulling 3 images at a time, 2 of which are like, 2 of them would be grayed out. I just know it would look better than just this one. Okay. I'll be back.